Hello, everybody. Today I am going to be reviewing for you a performance done by my local high school of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I must say it was definitely a fantastic show, although, a little bit as far as scene and set design, excuse me, setup, it was kind of more along the lines of instead of a musical, more like a concert in setup. There were several opportunities that could have had more acting or dancing, as you might think with a musical such as this. Although I will say that there were some very spectacular pieces of scenery that were designed by the local high school art group or art class. Um, they definitely spent a lot of time. There was, like, when Joseph was sold as a slave to Egypt, the scenes that were taking place in Egypt, they made this massive, just sphinx, and I mean, it was all glittery gold and blue, and it was just beautiful. And also, some of the wood shop folks helped with it as well. So they even had a point where during Potiphar's song, um, who, by the way, was played by the local football coach, did a great job too, by the way. But at one point during Potiphar's one of his numbers, the Sphinx's mouth was actually made to move. So anyway, scenery was wonderful. The costume designs were excellent. They seemed to fit in with the period very well. Um, the narrators, they actually broke it down into three different narrators. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story or with the show at all, but the narrator is simply only one part, and they do a lot in as far as telling the story and progressing the story and so on and so forth. But they decided, because they had such great vocal talents, that they would split that role as a narrator up into three different performers, who all did an excellent job. The gentleman that had played Joseph was an excellent singer, although I do think he could have made a few different changes. I don't know, what the director. I think that the directors really just wanted to stick more with how the composition was. So there wasn't a whole lot of change as far as allowing. It seemed like Joseph to be able to explore or express his creativity. Um, but I will say that I really did feel him. I got a bit emotional and felt his plight when he was performing "Close Every Door" at the right before essentially the intermission. If you guys aren't familiar with the story, Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is based from the story in Genesis about Joseph, who he's the son of Jacob, and he gets sold by his brothers to be a slave in Egypt, and ultimately becomes an interpreter of Pharaoh's dreams. Um, so, it's a story. At some point he gets thrown into a well, by his brothers, and then they sell him off, and then he gets imprisoned by Pharaoh, by Potiphar, excuse me, who he gets sold to be a slave as, for being tempted or seduced by Potiphar's wife. So he gets locked up in jail, and Pharaoh starts having these dreams, and Joseph ends up having the ability to interpret these dreams for Pharaoh, and helps Pharaoh become a success in Egypt. So they have, ample grain stores because he predicts or says that there's a famine coming, and there is. And that famine ultimately impacts Joseph's family, his biological family, Jacob and his brothers. So they end up making a journey into Egypt, that has ample food, ample water, places to live, and all that stuff. And they get reunited with Joseph, and of course, Joseph, being very distrustful of his brothers, sets up a test to test their integrity by slipping a chalice into one of his brothers' satchels, and they end up ultimately fessing up. And it's the show in and of itself. It's got a wide variety of different types of music. Pharaoh is like a Elvis impersonator. So it was just a great show. And ultimately, I do feel that it is because of arts like music and performances essentially like this that inspire people to be more creative. It also shows ultimately, like I mentioned, the art classes are they're in the high school. Those students, they got in and they helped with the set design. So it's definitely something that increases or produces skills. So I would really, it would be bad ultimately if a school district or like this one here were to cut the arts. Music in and of itself is something that helps stimulate the brain. In fact, there are studies that have shown that Mozart, if you're listening to it, even at young ages, will help stimulate learning. And it, as far as it being beneficial to the community, you end up with people who want to be contractors, builders. They're the people who are likely to start thinking outside the box in solving problems. I know the only thing that I really wish could have happened a little more, the turnout for the show wasn't that good. And that could be because there wasn't enough advertising. I know, sure, the parents of the cast, and trust me, it was a decently sized cast. Parents of the cast, would show up because of course their children were there. But ultimately, I feel like in our community here, there's just not enough advertisement or publicity for the arts. I know we have an art walk typically every year, but honestly, you never hear about it until right about the time that it's coming up, and even then, it's maybe in the paper that shows up once a week. And if you don't subscribe to the paper, you're never going to know when it is. So, I really feel to progress the arts here in the community, we need more outreach, more speaking about it, more publicity, more PR, so we can really show off what people can do. All right, hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Thank you for taking the time to take a look at this review. Bye-bye.